a psychologist at the Child Mind Institute. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, we are a national nonprofit that supports children and families with gold standard mental health care, advice, and resources, all of which are online and accessible to everyone. During the coronavirus crisis, our telehealth resources include diagnosis and treatment of mental health and learning disorders, 30-minute phone consultations with licensed clinicians, bereavement and grief support, and remote neuropsychological evaluations. That is just a sampling of what we're offering families at this time, so please visit childmind.org/telehealth to learn more. Today, I'd like to talk to you all about helping kids maximize their focus during remote learning, and I'll be answering your questions about that as well as anything else that you have any questions or are wondering about. So please feel free to post your questions in the feed. We'll also be sure to post some helpful links to resources on childmind.org, so check those out. Remember, we're here every day and we look through your questions daily. Again, today I'll be talking with you all about how to help your kids maximize their attention during their online or remote instruction. We are now almost at the third month of this bizarre experiment, for lack of a better descriptor of what's really going on right now. Hopefully you and your family have started to settle into some sort of rhythm as you're increasingly adapting to working from home and managing all of the new roles that you've recently taken on in your children's lives, and supporting your kids in school that now lives almost full-time on screens or packets of paper that schools have sent home. This is really hard. And it's hard for parents, it's hard for kids, and for those who have a hard time staying focused and organized under the best of circumstances, this is really hard. I know from the families with whom I work that schools are rolling out remote learning in a lot of different ways. So some kids are actually thriving in this environment. It offers, perhaps they have reduced social anxiety now, or their social anxiety is not being triggered as much because they have less exposure to their peers, or they have reduced, they feel less vulnerable to being teased by peers. They have less fear of getting called on in class, less fear of being late to class, whatever things can trigger their anxiety in a more typical school setting. But there are other kids who are really floundering. And many parents are finding that unless they are providing their kids with constant supervision and support, their kids are falling into a deeper and deeper hole of missed classes, incomplete schoolwork, etc. So how can we help our kids manage the last few weeks of the school year and set them up for success? The first thing is really set your child up for success. So attend to the physical needs of your child. Make sure that your child is getting sufficient sleep, adequate nutrition, that there are opportunities for exercise and outdoor activity built into every day. If your child takes medication, make sure that he or she is taking it as prescribed. So the physical, just the kind of the bare physiological aspect is really, really important. Try to have a dedicated workspace for your kids. That can be a big undertaking for a lot of families. I myself live in an apartment, so I understand how hard it can be to find a quiet, solitary place to get your work done. But to the extent that you can really try to carve out a place that is ample light, privacy, quiet space. If your children need supervision, some kids do need someone keeping an eye on them to make sure they're not double screening and clicking back and forth between a game and Amazon or a Facebook chat with their peers, etc. So again, that's within your view if that is necessary, or out of view of you so that they can really focus. We know that most kids associate learning with the classroom, and it can be hard for them to get into the mindset of learning if they're sitting in the middle of the den where they're used to relaxing and watching movies. But again, at the same time, as I said, your kids may need more monitoring and support for you. So for some kids, the kitchen table or a place that's really well within your view may make the most sense. Just make sure that the place that you set your child up for is calm, is quiet, is well lit, and is distraction free. Your kids may need some help resisting distractions. We all need help resisting distractions. And that might mean that you go through a ritual every day of taking away additional devices that your kids don't need. If your child is doing video conferencing on an iPad, on a computer or an iPad, they don't need to have a cell phone in their hands at the same time. Trying to monitor the number of tabs that are open that your kids are clicking through while they're in their class discussions is also really important. And there are a lot of distraction blockers out there that parents can get to know during this time, such as leech block, freedom, etc., to turn off access or limit access to certain sites, at least when you know your kids are supposed to be engaged in their schoolwork. Another part of really setting yourself up for success is to change out of pajamas and into school clothes, even if that's just another pair of pajamas or another pair of sweatpants. Just the ritual of getting dressed for the day can really help people get into the mindset of working. And that's true for adults who are working from home as well. Review the schedule with your kids for the day. Kids and adults really do benefit from knowing what's to come, how long something's going to last, and then an enjoyable task is going to follow, something that might be less appealing. With older kids especially, you can work together to develop that plan for the day so that they feel as though they have some say in kind of how their day is going to roll out. If you've been to any of our Facebook Lives to date or spoken to any teacher or psychologist at all, you've heard this over and over again, but really try to structure your kids' days and remain as consistent as you can. So that means making sure you're sticking with consistent wake times in the morning, eating meals at regularly scheduled times, sticking with bedtime routines. When you're scheduling your kids' work periods, try to schedule them in short chunks of time and really keep in mind what developmental expectations for attention span are. We know that kids in early elementary school can really focus for about 20 minutes. We think 6 to 8 year olds, I would say like around 15, 20 minutes, maybe a little bit more for the more mature among your kids. When we think about kids who are 10 to 12, I would say like 25 to 35 minute chunks, and then high schoolers probably closer to 45 minutes. But to have the expectation that your child is going to sit down at 9 o'clock and work straight through lunch is really setting the bar a little bit too high, and just setting yourself up for feeling frustrated and your kids for feeling frustrated. So again, try to create blocks of time that are developmentally appropriate for your kids' age. And there's variability within that as well, even within those age brackets. Really try to incorporate breaks into those work periods. So provide opportunities for physical movement is really important. We know that physical movement can help kids to recharge their focus, and it also really helps to consolidate learning. We know that physical activity is really helpful for learning and memory. Some other just broader things before I get to your questions: chunk work down. You'll hear this a lot from psychologists and from teachers. Kids become overwhelmed often by large multi-component projects. So if you can help them break that down into smaller, more manageable parts and really provide a lot of encouragement and praise when they've completed small parts of that before moving on to the next can be really, really helpful. Trying to think about alternating less appealing activities with more appealing activities. So if your child is very averse to math, I always use math as the example because I hated math growing up, maybe then follow that up with a fun science activity or an outdoor break, or a lunch break, or Zoom call with friends. But you want to kind of give them a carrot at the end of that less appealing activity that they can work towards. And time management techniques can be really, really helpful for younger kids. So teaching them how to use a timer, and it gives them an opportunity to feel a little bit more independent. And it also gives you a little bit of time to attend to things that you need to be attending to, such as your own work, perhaps. So setting a timer for 15 minutes and saying, you work on this for 15 minutes, I'll be back to check on your progress in a little while, gives you both the space that you may need to feel like you're able to get your work done, and again, kids to feel a little bit more independent, which definitely is helpful with confidence. And the last broad statement is just try to keep your interactions as positive as possible. It might be really hard for your kids and you to suddenly accept the idea that you're their teacher. You're not their teacher, and no one has the expectation that you are their teacher. The most important thing for you right now is really to be providing feelings of love and security for your kids. And if you notice that your kids are becoming frustrated by an assignment, maybe suggest that they take a break from it and return to it after they've had the opportunity to regroup a little bit. Use incentives in order to get them started again. Try to use your positive attention as a reward for your kids' effort. So scheduling special playtime with you can actually be a really powerful motivator. So something like, after you finish this worksheet, we'll take a break and play Monopoly for, I don't know, I was going to say 10 minutes, but Monopoly never takes 10 minutes. So it's probably an unrealistic break time. But develop rewards for sticking with and finishing their work, and really try to use yourself as a reward. I think that this whole experience has really been an amazing way for parents to get to know their kids in a way that they haven't before, which I think can be good and bad. But I know that parents and I myself have really cherished the additional time that we have with our kids that we might not otherwise have. So keep those interactions positive and use that positive, enjoyable time together as a motivator for your kids' task engagement. So we're just going to take a very quick 30-second break, and then we will be right back to answer more of your questions.
The Child Mind Institute is a national leader in children's mental health and learning disorders. In the face of the coronavirus pandemic, we are here to support all families. Whether you need help with remote learning, stress management techniques, or support for children who are in distress, the Child Mind Institute is available to help your family cope during this challenging time. We're here for you wherever you are. To request an appointment, visit childmind.org/telehealth.
Hi everyone, we're back, and I'm going to get to some of the questions that have started to come through. There's actually a question right now about anxiety. Someone asked, how can I help my child if my child is feeling anxious? That is an excellent question, something that I think a lot of parents are wondering right now, because a lot of kids are feeling very anxious, whether they had pre-existing anxiety before this whole crisis, or whether this is a newer thing. When things are uncertain, people feel anxious. So I think it's certainly understandable for kids and for adults to feel very anxious, because our whole world, sort of the bottom, sort of everything predictable and structured that we knew has sort of disappeared. Our lives have been very disrupted by this crisis. For a lot of families, financial uncertainty has become a new thing that they have to manage, and which creates stress in parents, and kids are, I think, are very highly attuned to their kids' feelings. I know that kids are very sensitive to just background media. So kids may be hearing what their parents are either talking about or listening to on the news, and asking and wondering about what's going on. And the uncertainty of not being in school, not knowing when we'll be back in school, not knowing what we're going to be doing this summer, not knowing when we're going to be able to see our friends and resume any sense of normalcy, can be very unsettling for kids. So I think the most important thing is really to validate that, to take time to have a conversation with your child and validate the feelings of uncertainty and how that contributes to real feelings of anxiety during this moment, and also try to understand what specifically is causing the anxiety. Is it the uncertainty around when we're going to be back in school? Is it the uncertainty around illness? I kids who have anxiety around getting sick are hearing that a lot of people are getting sick, and we're taking these measures to keep ourselves from getting sick. So I think that can certainly trigger that type of anxiety in kids. So find out if you can help your kids to pinpoint what specifically is causing them to feel anxious, and then provide answers in a developmentally appropriate way. So everyone feels anxious when they are left in the dark. So I think hiding information from your kids is not helpful. It's likely to make them feel more uncomfortable, because they feel as though they then start to fantasize about how bad it is. If mom's not even telling me, then it must be horrific, and they'll create stories in their minds that are probably more catastrophic than what you would be telling them. And they like to know that you trust them and feel confident that they can handle what you're going to tell them, and you want to communicate to them that you trust them to handle the feelings that are going to be created by hearing about what's going on, and also that you have this under control, even if you don't think that you have this under control, but you have the immediate circumstances under control, and that they hopefully have a place to be, and they're with your family, and I'm hoping that your family is healthy and safe, and the measures that you're taking right now are designed by the adults who know what they're doing to keep you and your kids and your family and your friends safe. So again, validate. Yes, it's really scary that we're not going to school right now. It's really scary that all of these changes are taking place. It can be really hard that all these changes are taking place. We miss our friends. We miss seeing our family. We miss going to our regularly scheduled activities. And this is why we're doing it. But to the extent that you can show them that there are solutions to kind of the scary things out there, gives them a sense of control, and that things are going to be okay. But certainly, I think the worst thing that you can do is ignore it and not address kids' questions. I wouldn't necessarily provide more information than what they're asking for. I would answer their questions in a direct, straightforward, and certainly child-friendly and developmentally appropriate way, and then try to move on. So you might end up putting information in their head that they didn't even know they needed to seek. And so answer what they're asking and then move on to something else. But thank you for that question. Here are some other questions about remote learning. Our apartment is tiny and my child can't concentrate with her toddler brother running around. There's nowhere else to go though. What can we do? This is really difficult. A lot of families who, especially those who live in apartments, have limited space, literally, limited space for their kids to get work done. So it can be really hard to carve out space for your kids. So you know, I spoke about this earlier, really trying to find a space, even if it's a corner in your apartment that your child can set up as her workspace. You want to have ample light, minimal distractions on the desk or on the table. Make sure that your kids' learning materials are easily accessible so that she doesn't have to keep getting up and getting down, which is going to disrupt her attention and engagement in the work. And as far as having a toddler running around, that's really tricky. You may or may not have control over when your daughter has to engage in learning. A lot of, if your daughter's class has established video conferences, you can't necessarily control when those take place. So you'll have less say. But if you can control when your daughter is doing her work, you can try to schedule it perhaps for a time when your toddler is napping, or depending on family circumstances, if you have another adult in the house, although we have a lot of two parent working from home situations, so this can always be tricky. But if you can sort of divide and conquer, and one parent can take the toddler out, either engage the toddler in a more sedentary or quiet activity, or take the child out for a walk to give your daughter some time and space to get work done. Planning to engage your toddler in a quieter activity during that time, including perhaps screen time. I know parents have really mixed feelings about using screen time, but these are not normal times. So I think parents have to kind of use the tools that are available to them. And if you're strategic about when you use screen time, it's actually a really nice way to give yourselves a break, and also to keep your toddler engaged in something that's a little quieter and a little more sedentary and out of your daughter's way, so that she can get some work done. Other options, though, if those are not options, is headphones. So you can get like noise canceling headphones that you can hook up to the computer, or if she's not in a video conference, just hook it up to some sort of white noise that can potentially drown out the noise of sort of the ambient noise, including the noise of your toddler. And a little DIY option, if you can somehow create like a tabletop divider. I'm thinking back to when I was in elementary school and we had standardized tests, and they would kind of make these little paper cubbies for us to block out. Well, it wasn't intended to block out distraction. I think it was intended to keep us honest. But you could also use it to block out distractions if you can create a little cubby or stall for your daughter. But, you know, we can only do the best that we can do. These certainly aren't ideal times. So we just have to kind of make the best of a not fantastic situation. I'm going to hop to another question. My son has ADHD. How can I help him tune out the other kids' little moving squares on the Zoom calls that he's doing with his teacher? So I was new to Zoom before this whole quarantine situation. And so I myself am still learning all the features of Zoom, but a lot of these video conferencing platforms have options to either pin a specific speaker so that your son only shows the selected speaker at the time. Otherwise, Zoom, I know for sure, and a lot of other platforms, I believe, similarly will cut to the active speaker at the time, and sometimes have the gallery of students also. So I would probably check with the teacher first, because there might be a reason that that the teacher wants your son to be able to see and engage with the gallery. But assuming that it's okay with your teacher and you think it'll really help your son to focus better if he only sees one person at a time, you can pin that. You can pin the teacher so that the camera really stays focused on that teacher, and it will only affect his screen and not others. This is really a brave new world for people. I think one of the challenges of remote learning is that it's putting more pressure on parents right now to learn about and to learn how to use this technology. Unlike our kids who were born into this culture and are therefore digital natives, they were born like with iPads in their hands. Parents are digital immigrants, and they really have to figure out how to use these platforms. But these platforms are often thoughtfully designed and have a lot of options and modifications that may help to maximize your son's engagement. So if you can't figure it out yourself, perhaps you can touch base with his teacher or someone else that you know who's tech savvy, who can help you find fixes to minimize distractions. Let's see, I'm going to hop to another question. My son hates remote learning, just hates it. How can I support him? I would start by saying, yes, this is really hard. It is really hard. I have to tell you, I myself, I am a total nerd. I attend the annual conference every year of the American Academy of Pediatric Neuropsychology, and I love it. And this year, the whole conference was remote, and it was really, really hard. I think I maybe took in like 15 minutes of each 3-hour session. And I am an adult with a fully developed frontal lobe, I think, and I was watching lectures about something that I'm truly passionate about, and I really couldn't stay focused and did not like it. So just imagine being a child who doesn't have that same level of inhibitory control and capacity to sustain and regulate attention and keep focused on something that might not be so appealing to them. It's really hard. So validate how difficult this is. The other thing is that the classroom provides a lot of non-content related things. It's a social outlet. It's where kids are seeing their friends. They get a lot of special one-on-one attention, hopefully from their teachers. They have specials that cater to their interests. They have art class and music class and science experiments to sort of break up the monotony of the day. And sometimes it's those things that keep kids going, even when the actual learning part is really hard or boring, and they're missing those things. So it's certainly understandable. This is a very different way of being in school right now. So to the extent that you can try to recreate some of that for your son, I think that could be really helpful. But then also find out, what is it about remote learning that he finds challenging? Is it that it's hard for him to remain engaged? Is it hard for him to just find the material interesting? Does he miss his friends? Is he nervous during the video conferences? If you find out what it is about the remote learning that's challenging for him, you can then try to problem solve with him. And then this is sort of a related question. With the school year winding down and remote learning dragging on, my daughter is just about ready to give up. This is something I'm hearing more and more about again, and we're now at, I think, the 10-week mark for most schools, at least the schools near me. So we're all feeling quarantine fatigue. I'm feeling quarantine. It's hard. And from an academic year perspective, we are at Memorial Day. It's almost June, so we're really in the final stretch. So I think this is when kids really need to dig down deep, and they need their parents to be their cheerleaders now also. So it's a lot to ask of parents. They've already taken on a lot of new roles in COVID-19 crisis. They've become their kids' teachers and learning specialists and therapists and tutors and coaches and playmates and chefs and secretaries. And now I'm saying you need to be their cheerleader. But you need to be their cheerleader. Check in with your kids, ask them how they're holding up, ask them what they're feeling about another month worth of remote learning at this point, and what they need from you in order to get through the next couple of weeks. Model for them what you want to see from them. Try to remain positive and stick with your routine. Continue to layer them with labeled praise, and really try to focus your praise on the process as opposed to the outcome. So I love how focused you were during your Zoom call. I love how hard you worked during that math worksheet, even though it was really challenging. To the extent that you can really focus on what they control in the process we know is really helpful in developing grit and perseverance. Incentivize them. Kids we know are motivated by rewards. Everyone is motivated by rewards. But chunk assignments down and then provide them with small rewards for completing small parts of bigger assignments. Stick with structure and routine. Sticking to a schedule, as we already talked about, really provides kids the stability and predictability that they need in order to keep their eye on the prize. And I will then say, in the same breath, mix it up a little bit. So there's nothing magical about the hours from 8 to 3, except that's when it works out for the rest of society to have kids occupied in school, and it makes it easier to coordinate bus schedules, et cetera. There are a lot of developmental reasons why schools take place in 8 to 3. It also has to do with like farming and stuff, that are no longer relevant for most of at least the country. But especially for older teenagers, it's actually not an ideal time for them to be engaged in school. So perhaps like mix it up a couple of days a week, as long as they don't have video conferences that they need to attend. Experiment with shifting their work around a little bit, as long as they commit to getting their work done. Appeal to your child's teacher. See if your child's teacher has any thoughts about how to keep your kids engaged. And it might even be helpful to schedule, if your teacher's up to it, a special call or a recorded video or something, so your teacher can also be your child's cheerleader along with you. Rule out other issues. I think for a lot of families, having their kids struggle right in front of them, I'm not sure why I put that in quotes, but I think I was just, it's a word that I'm not sure why I put it in quotes, but having their kids struggle right in front of their eyes has been a really important and eye-opening experience for them. They're now able to see firsthand for themselves how difficult it is for their kids to stay focused during class discussions, or how effortful and inaccurate their kids' reading is. So perhaps there's something else going on that's worth looking into. So now that you've seen this in real time, perhaps speak with your child's teacher, the school psychologist, the learning specialist, etc. And the last thing is maybe pivot. Your kids may not finish the school year as strong as they started it out, or as well as you had hoped that they would finish the school year. But guess what? A lot of things aren't turning out right now the way that we had initially expected. So establish a bar that you want your kid to meet. Maybe that means you're insisting on the bare minimum. They have to get every assignment completed at least. Set up natural consequences. So if they're missing assignments, they then have to miss XYZ event or fun activity that they were planning to do. And empathize with how difficult this whole situation has been for them, and move on. This will end. And preserving our kids' mental health really is important. So with that, I'm going to thank all of you for joining me again. I hope it was helpful. Please remember that we're here every day. We look through your questions daily. So if we didn't get to something today that we asked, it'll be forwarded to our team to be addressed in future Facebook Lives, or we can post links on our website as well. The Child Mind Institute is here to help with the mental health and parenting needs of this crisis, no matter where you are. Please visit us at childmind.org/telehealth to learn all about the incredible variety of remote telehealth resources that we have available during this time for kids, teenagers, and young adults. Be safe, and thank you again for joining us.